business taxes. Was stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on turbotax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service.
So good, so good, so good.
New markdowns up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Fresh kicks, spring tops, new dresses. There's always a score.
I mean, the denim section is unreal.
Why do I rack? All the dresses.
I always find something amazing.
Head to your Nordstrom Rack store to find can't-miss deals on all the spring things. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for an Oikos remix or Light and Fit remix. Like a crunchy storm of sea salt praline pretzels, dark chocolate, and butter toffee, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 6 remix varieties, 3 Epic Complete Protein Oikos remix options, or 3 craveable Light and Fit remix options. See remixyogurt.com.
Hi, this is Javon, your Blinds.com design consultant.
Oh, wow. A real person.
Yep. I'm here to help with everything from selecting the perfect window treatments to...
Well, I've got a complicated project.
No problem. I can even help schedule a professional measure and install. We can also send you samples fast and free.
I just might have to do more.
Whatever you need.
So the first room we're looking at is for...
Shop Blinds.com now and save up to 45% site-wide. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
You are now listening to the Dynasty Rewind.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dynasty Rewind. I'm your host, Michael Bauer, the best in the business. Once again, back in business. Joined as always by my faithful co-host, Nate, the Professor Christian. Nate, hello and welcome back.
Thank you, Mike. As always, ecstatic to be here. Ecstatic to be here. I am getting old. I have allergies, seasonal allergies for the second year in a row.
Same.
Never had allergies in my entire life. Watched you every spring, fall apart. And I was like, I'm not that guy. And here I am.
You grow into it, man. I didn't start getting them until I was like 18. They thought I had mono. Jokes on the doctor. You have to kiss someone to get that. So, yeah, didn't have to deal with that. But, yeah, it stinks. I was inside all day at work. Fine. The second I leave to go pick up my taxes, boom. It's like the second I walked out the door. So it's been fun. Those of you who do not have to deal with that, congrats. Those of you who do, we got good news because the draft is a little over 2 weeks away. Yeah. Definitely stay tuned because we are going to be doing some live streams during the draft. Well, not during the draft, I'm sorry, but, so basically here's how it's going to work. I'm going to map this out for you guys, okay? Thursday, night 1, we're going to be chilling. We'll be in the Discords. If you want to get in the Discord, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. You get a week for free. It's on us. You're going to love it. You're going to like the way it looks. I guarantee it. So hop on in there. But Friday morning, we're going to be doing a live stream. Saturday morning, we'll be doing a live stream. And Sunday morning, we'll be doing a live stream as well. Times are, as of right now, to be determined. But I would say anywhere between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. for a start time. Sundays will likely be a little bit earlier just because, Zach and I were coming in, Sean as well. We got to get home. So, Sundays will likely be a little bit earlier. But looking forward to that. The draft is almost here, Nate. But I'll tell you what, until we get there, there's some rookies. And, some people, everybody's about value, right? How are these guys valued? Are they appropriately valued, underrated, overrated? And I know it's hard to under or overrate rookies, but I think it's possible. There's guys that may not match up to the hype. Maybe we don't think they're going to get put to a good spot. Maybe we just don't like them as a prospect. All of these things are 100% possible. So today we're talking about over and underrated rookies. But Nate, before we kick it off, Okay. Now, none of us had this player on here because, quite frankly, there's question marks. So I wanted to ask you, how do we, in this conversation, rate Colorado defensive back / wide receiver / quarterback, depending on who you hear from as well, Travis Hunter in this discussion, forgive me, underrated, overrated, or appropriately rated? You could throw that in there as well.
Yeah, I think it depends on the channel or the analyst who's talking about it. Because I've seen, on this channel, we've had Travis Hunter in the second round of some of our mock drafts as we've been very conservative with approaching Travis Hunter up to this point. I've seen other channels where they have him as the 102 in one quarterback, where they have him as a top 5, top 4 pick in Superflex drafts. So maybe it's a little overvalued there. Maybe we're undervaluing him a little bit on this channel. As we get closer to the draft, we are learning more, and it's a little eye-opening. I'm changing my opinion as I read more, as I hear more. And what I've heard and what I've read is that the Cleveland Browns seem to be a shoo-in at this point to draft Travis Hunter, number 2 overall. It seems like it's going to start off Cam Ward and then Travis Hunter at the top of this year's draft. And the Browns are looking at Travis Hunter as a wide receiver first.
That changes a lot of things for me personally.
Changes a lot for both of us. We have not heard that yet. Now, of course, we don't really know for sure if the Browns are going to draft him number 2 or not until draft night. But if that's what they're talking about, they want Travis Hunter. He's that generational player. They're going to look at him as a wide receiver first with the ability to play some cornerback. And this is a team that their best wide receiver is Jerry Jeudy, and then it's Cedric Tillman, who I know many of us adore. But Cedric Tillman at the end of the day is not, an alpha wide receiver or the next best thing for the Browns. Travis Hunter would pretty much walk in there and give Jerry Jeudy a run for his money and probably be the wide receiver 1 pretty quickly. So now I don't know who's playing quarterback for the Browns. Really, I guess Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some question marks there. But if we're looking at Travis Hunter as a full-time wide receiver or 75% of the time wide receiver, definitely raises my value of him. It certainly pushes him into the first round. Maybe if he was truly going to be seeing, 80% of offensive snaps or something like that and truly being like one of their top wide receivers, possibly into the top half of the first round. So as we get closer, we're learning more of that value. It's a great question because his value is really undetermined right now compared to the rest of these prospects. But as we get closer, I'm certainly raising my value of him. I have him probably somewhere around that 105, 106 right now, with some question marks still out there as we kind of see where he lands and what their plan is for him.
It's okay to not know how you feel about a player right now. The draft is going to tell us a lot. And, a lot of people like really early drafts, and that's fine. This is why I like my drafts June or possibly even sometimes a little bit later, because when you see things completely shake out, then you can properly evaluate a player and put them where you think they need to be. It's going to be interesting. And just looking at the Browns depth chart, Jerry Jeudy, the aforementioned Cedric Tillman as well. We got Michael Woods, Jamari Thrash, David Bell, DeAndre Carter, and Caden Davis is your current depth chart. This is obviously going to change between now and September when the season kicks off. This depth chart has to get better. It just has to. And then looks like Kenny Pickett's going to be back there slinging the rock. They got to definitely think about taking a quarterback as well. So, Sean Watson, he ain't it.
I don't think so.
No, he's toast. But let's kick it off. Who is your first? And we're gonna flip flop it back and forth here. So Nate, you're gonna kick it off for us. Give us a player that you feel right now is overrated, and this might be my first. How dare you? Of the pod, first of many.
First of many. Okay. Well, I want to start off with someone I knew would probably get me in trouble, and that's Kaleb Johnson, the running back out of Iowa. I'm sorry, Mike.
It's okay. I mean, I like Kaleb Johnson. He's not my favorite running back in the draft, but I do like Kaleb Johnson. And there's another guy, running back especially, landing spot dependent.
Yeah. Look, I have Kaleb Johnson just outside of my top 5 running backs. Not very far. I think he's probably RB6. So I'm not super low on Kaleb Johnson. I'm not out here saying he's a day 3 pick or he's not going to be successful in the NFL. I think he's a very solid day 2 pick for the NFL. But I've been seeing people out there inflating him into the top 3 of this class, putting him up there with Travion Henderson, Ashton Genty, and Marion Hampton in that tier. And I just think that's a little irresponsible. There's even been talk about Kaleb Johnson sneaking into the first round, Mike. What is this? This is peak, irresponsibleness of the pre-draft process with the hype with a couple weeks left. Everyone's a first-round pick. There's 60 first-round picks apparently currently as we go into the last 2 weeks. Look,
they're extending the first round.
Yeah, comp picks for the first round would be great.
Yeah.
Look, I like him. He's an upright runner with limited agility, limited quickness. He did run a 4.57 40-yard dash. Not terrible. There's a running back I like that ran a very similar 40-yard dash. But he's got great long speed. Long speed's only so good in the NFL. You only have so many opportunities to really show off that long speed. He's a guy that creates that opportunity pretty often because of how he runs with his power and, that straight line running style that he has. If he goes into a system that really fits him, hey, I think there's a lot of success in Kaleb Johnson's future. He could be a very good running back who finds the end zone plenty. He did find 23 touchdowns last year. So this is a guy that does know how to find the end zone. But 6'1", 225 pounds, and with that 4.57 40-yard dash, his speed score is only 75th percentile. So pretty good, but not elite. And this is what I'm saying. Just a little overrated. I can't put him into that first round category. He's not that great of a prospect. He's a very good prospect. I would have him in day 2 in any draft that we've recently had. According to Mock Draftable, Mike, I'm not sure if you've been on Mock Draftable before. It's a pretty fun website where you can look at players' measurables, all of their measurables from the combine, and compare it to other guys. You also get a lot of comparisons of players who are similar to the player that you're looking at. Here are some of the size speed comparisons for Kaleb Johnson. Okay. Najee Harris, big fan. Brian Robinson Jr., Royce Freeman, Kalen Ballage.
Ooh, Kalen Ballage and Royce Freeman. A couple throwbacks there for you.
Yeah, there we go. So, look, there is a very obvious style of runner here. Okay. And this kind of runner can be a very solid RB2 on a season, but lacks the upside to really be that RB1 overall, to be that top 12 running back in most years. And I think that's kind of what we're getting with Kaleb Johnson. I think we just need to make sure that we're keeping our expectations realistic. I think Kaleb Johnson does have RB2 upside, but I think anything past that is a little optimistic and maybe a little unfounded on what I've seen so far, at least. So if I'm saying that Kaleb Johnson's a little overrated, people look at him in the middle of the first round with a lot of other good prospects in this draft. Who would I look to draft instead? I'm kind of placing Kaleb Johnson much closer to the end of the first round in our drafts, if not at the beginning of the second round. And in that area, I'm looking at Quinshon Judkins. I'm looking at Cam Scatterbo. I'm looking at Devin Neal, but I'm probably a little bit early on him than other people are. Look, I'm fine with Kaleb being in that same tier as Quinshon Judkins and Scatterbo and some of those other guys around that area, but I don't think he's above those guys into that next tier with those elite guys like Gene T and Omarion Hampton. And I'm going to put Travion Henderson out there, who's still my RB2.
All right. Kaleb Johnson, by the way, projected second-round draft pick, courtesy of NFLMockDraftDatabase.com.
Solid.
And in his last year at Iowa, 240 carries for 1,537 yards, averaging 6.4 yards per carry and 21 touchdowns. I think he will be very scheme-dependent, though, in the NFL. So,
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. So let's go to a player of mine who I think is underrated, and I've been a fan or stan, if you will, since he was brought to my attention, and that is Kansas State's own DJ Giddens. I love me some DJ Giddens, Nate. Now, I feel like the draft community hasn't quite caught up to him yet. He ran a 4.43 40-yard dash at the combine, a 4.33 shuttle as well, for what that's worth. He's only a projected 4th-round draft pick. I don't really care.
I think that's solid.
Yeah, I know. I didn't look, and maybe I should.
This year's class.
Yeah, this year's class. When I force you to do our day 3 running back study in the summer, get ready for that. You're gonna hate me so much. I can't wait so much. But this year is going to be a little bit different. Day 3 will not be a death sentence to running backs this year. And you know what, Nate? I brought up Mock Draftable, because why not? Another resource I could use. Would you like to know some players he's been comped to?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah, if
love
we're
this website.
going by comparisons, a couple guys in this draft, Omarion Hampton, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, and a couple guys from the past too. He's in the same categories as far as his athleticism as guys like Joseph Adai. He was good for a little bit.
Love me some Joseph Adai. Boise State boy. Go Broncos.
Right. Rico Dowdle, is he flashy? No. But look, he might have won you some games this year. Oh, and by the way, athletically, he is very close to former Iowa State running back Breece Hall. So there you go. This guy has a great size speed combo. I will say he looked great at the combine. I think he looks even better on film. He is not a slouch as a receiving back. He's not going to be detrimental to your team on third downs. You don't have to pull him. One thing I will say, just look, I got to be transparent here. Slightly upright runner, that can be coached out. He's not as powerful as a guy like Adrian Peterson was, who kind of an upright runner, but AP just had so much power. But for his size, he's fairly agile as well, unlike Kaleb Johnson, which you mentioned. And that was a knock I had on Kaleb Johnson as well. He's a one-cut guy. DJ Giddens, I think he has more moves than a guy like Kaleb Johnson does. Now, I said I think he's going to be a late day 2, early day 3 pick. Given the right spot, could potentially have a good role in the NFL. And I still stand by that. Obviously, things could change between now and 2.5 weeks, but I like DJ Giddens. I think he's going to be a great steal. And look, with the way running back is going in the NFL, don't be afraid to take guys that don't have the clearest path to being starters, because things happen. Players get traded, players get hurt. Players don't in front of them don't come and always show out. So don't be afraid to take a guy who, as a rookie, is slightly buried on the depth chart. Maybe, with the draft coming, I've heard some buzz about the Packers drafting a running back. Maybe take a stab on Marshawn Lloyd, see how cheap you can get him for. Yeah, it's just a thought. Nate, why don't you go ahead and give us another underrated player?
All right. I wouldn't have called this player underrated early in the offseason process, but at this point, I think he qualifies for the underrated tag. And that's Shedeur Sanders. It's pretty obvious at this point that Cam Ward's going to be the 101 in the draft this year. He's the kind of consensus quarterback 1 among the NFL. And I understand that Shedeur Sanders does not have the same upside that Cam Ward has. Cam Ward's, a bit more. I don't want to say he's that much more athletic than Shedeur Sanders, because Shedeur Sanders is, a very good athlete in his own right, but he doesn't extend the play in the same way that Cam Ward does. No, Cam Ward doesn't necessarily get a ton of rushing yards, but he's got a bit more upside with his arm, with his demeanor, and how he extends the play than a guy like Shedeur Sanders. And we've seen Cam Ward do a lot with a little. Shedeur Sanders, meanwhile, has had a lot of wide receiver help. Obviously Travis Hunter being there, but Colorado's had a very good wide receiver room over the past 2 years, and Shedeur Sanders has certainly taken advantage of it. Now, at the same time, Colorado had one of the worst offensive lines over the past 2 years, both years. Terrible, terrible offensive line. And also, they've had basically no running game to really supplement Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
So he's also done a pretty good bit with very little around him outside of that very strong wide receiver room. Now, there's always going to be some talk about him holding onto the ball too long. You can place a little bit of blame on those sacks on the offensive line, sure, and a little bit of blame certainly does go on him for holding onto the ball too long. But I think that at this point, we're seeing Shedeur Sanders not just a top 5 pick, not falling to the 3 or the 5 like we saw early in the season where Cam Ward was the 101. But now we're seeing Shedeur Sanders slide to the Steelers in the 20s. We're seeing him fall into the very end of the first round. Someone's trading up at like 31, 32 to pick him up with a 5th-year option. Like, that's a little ridiculous now. Come on, people. We have gone the full circle with Shedeur Sanders, where we hyped him up to be the quarterback 1 of this class, and now some people are putting Jackson Dart above him, which is a little ridiculous. So I'm just here to kind of, buoy us back, get us back to where we're supposed to be level-headed with our ideas of Shedeur Sanders. He's certainly a first-round pick, in my opinion. I think he's worthy of a top 10 pick. And in fantasy football, I'm certainly still interested in him in the first half of the first round in Superflex drafts, because he may not have the upside, like I said earlier, that Ward has. But we've seen many quote-unquote game managers be quite successful in fantasy football. Guys like Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield. I don't know if you call him a game manager or not, but he's not, running for a ton of yards at this point. Even Geno Smith was quarterback 13 last year. Okay.
Yeah.
So a very solid quarterback 2 on your team can be very valuable, especially, if depending on how you built your roster, you have a really strong quarterback 1. Shedeur Sanders probably isn't your quarterback 2 moving into this coming year, but down the road, I think he can be a very viable quarterback 2 who can be in that kind of quarterback 12 to 16 range on a seasonal finish and be in that same conversation as those guys who I just mentioned outside of Geno Smith, who have very recently finished within the top 12 and been quarterback 1s. And Shedeur Sanders, like he had at Colorado, a very strong wide receiver room, is going to need weapons around him in the NFL. I don't know if Shedeur Sanders is going to be a guy that, on a really bad offense is going to be able to elevate them and take them to the next level. But you put him in offense, say he goes to the Steelers, where they're going to have themselves a much better offensive line than Colorado had. They have DK Metcalf. They have George Pickens. They're going to have a running game, whether it's Jalen Warren, Kenny Gainwell, or someone they're drafting this year. With an offense like that, I think Shedeur Sanders can be quite successful in the NFL. Now, this is a guy that is very accurate, very good decision maker. Does not throw a lot of interceptions, has one of the highest completion rates in the history of college football. And who was the last uber accurate quarterback to come out? Bo Nix. I think that worked out pretty well for a lot of people, and a lot of people were doubting him going into the draft and going into even his senior season. So I'm not going to say that Shedeur Sanders is exactly Bo Nix, but I do think that Shedeur Sanders is currently underrated, and we need to realize, he is the quarterback 2 of this draft class. I'm not too interested in the guys after him, and I think he's going to be viable and valuable for your fantasy team. So he's certainly worth, to me, still at 104, 105, 106 in the Superflex League. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and he is projected to be a first-round draft pick, courtesy of NFLMockDraftDatabase.com. And Nate, you're right. Colorado, not a good running team. You want to hear their running back stats for the season?
I don't know if anyone even had 500 yards. It's pretty bad.
Charlie Offerdahl, 26 carries, 119 yards. Okay, he played 13 games. Dallin Hayden, I don't know if I said your first name right, Mr. Hayden. Forgive me. 64 carries, 196 yards, and 1 touchdown. That's in 11 games.
Former Ohio State Buckeye.
Yep. Isaiah Augustave, their leading rusher at the running back position. 11 games, 85 carries, 384 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And Micah Welch, 9 games, 43 carries, 186 yards, and 4 touchdowns. The best was Offerdahl, averaging 4.6 yards per carry. So, yeah, they were not a good running team. That offensive line was not very good. So I do agree. And Shedeur Sanders is extremely accurate. But that leads me to my overrated player. That's Jalen Milroe. Right now, he is a projected second-round draft pick, courtesy of NFLMockDraftDatabase.com. Okay? Here's the thing about Jalen Milroe. You want to talk about athleticism for days? This guy's got it. He also has an absolute cannon for an arm.
Mm-hmm.
However, he is extremely inaccurate. There are times he could settle in, but under pressure, he can definitely be pressured into making mistakes. He also does not always read defenses well. In college, he was able to use his athleticism to escape a lot. That won't always be there in the NFL. He's a big dude too. I'll give him that. So, if he's taking hits, he'll be able to absorb that pretty well. Now, I have seen people labeling him as a generational prospect if in the right system, but let's be real here. What top-tier quarterback isn't a generational prospect in the right system, right? We've seen guys that we thought were going to be good quarterbacks go to teams and just flat out fail. This is the NFL. These things do happen. And to me, as of right now, April 8th, 2025, 9:00 p.m., I'm labeling as Jalen Milroe as 2025's Anthony Richardson. I see a lot of parallels here. And look, if I'm wrong and he has a great career and I'm wrong, I will happily be wrong. I was wrong about Jalen Hurts, and I have a second Super Bowl trophy to thank for it. So if I'm wrong about Jalen Milroe and I was wrong about Jalen, I guess I'm just wrong about all the Jalens out there. But still, right now, I would rather draft Jackson Dart. I think he's going to have better draft capital. Talk much, Mike. I think he might get put into a better scheme than Jalen Milroe, and I don't think he's going to need as much coaching to get him on the field. But one knock about Jackson Dart is I don't remember the last time I saw him take a snap under center. Definitely didn't do that at Ole Miss. So that's something that's going to have to be worked out. But look, these guys have been training. They've been getting ready for the combine and the draft. He'll be ready to go by the time spring ball starts for the rookies.
It's time to rewrite the vacation rules. With Royal Caribbean, your family can look forward to just about anything. Break the thrill barrier, roaring down the tallest water slide in North America. Jump into breathtaking jungles and jaw-dropping coves. Vibe off the charts on our private island Perfect Day at Coco Cay. And end the day knowing things are just getting started. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader. Like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
We're shipping Easter gifts with a rapid-fire round of questions. Ready?
Yes. My gift. Can you pack it?
Yep.
Ship it?
Yes.
Guarantee it?
Of course.
Oh, send gift baskets?
For sure.
Protect electronics? Dog-proof it? Return it if they hate it?
Yes, no, and yeah.
Are you the UPS store?
Hey, we have a winner!
Visit the upsstore.com/guarantee for full details. Most locations are independently owned. Product services, prices, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Visit a store today.
All right, Nate, we are back. And let's go to your next overrated player. And dare I say, how dare you?
How dare I?
Yeah, you know.
This is maybe a little bit targeted, I have to admit. But, I wanted to make sure I got this out, while we still could. My next overrated player, Trey Harris, wide receiver, Ole Miss. Well, I think is possibly the player that we disagree the most on in this draft, Mike, according to our scouting grades.
Sounds about right.
Trey Harris, number one, not that fast. 4.54, 65th percentile speed score. He's also not that big. I know I'm being a little nitpicky here. 6'2", 205. He's a big guy, but 60th percentile catch rate is per player profile because he's got small arms. He's got small arms, Mike. 6'2", but small arms.
What do you want me to say to that?
I don't know. Just telling you. Just letting you know. Okay, so you're looking at a guy, 65th speed score, 65th or 60th percentile catch radius. I'm not saying he's a tweener, but what's he really good at? He's not super fast. He's not very super big. He's kind of a little bit of both. Okay, I pulled up Mock Draftable again. So okay, well he's kind of not that fast. He's kind of not that big. He's kind of big, but not that big. Who's it compared to? Well, compares to Javon Baker, Marquez Callaway. Okay, it's not a super exciting names, to be honest.
Yeah, I like Javon Baker. Okay,
I like Marquez Callaway. I had him on a lot of teams. I sold him for a couple second rounds 2 years ago. This is also a guy that has been productive, but never surpassed 25% target share in a season during his college career. And a lot of these guys that we're talking about, going to the NFL and becoming good wide receivers, certainly surpassed the 25% target share. Now, Ole Miss, they spread the ball out, but he spent 2 years at Louisiana Tech as well, where he performed pretty well and still did not reach that 25% mark. Now, Mike, you're like, okay, well, that's fine. This guy, he had 1,030 yards this year and, just had a ton of yards per catch. He's really, really good. Well, I dove into it because I remember his really hot start. I remember him taking off throughout the college season and being like, hey, Trey Harris, that's a name to watch. Well, 628 of his 1,030 yards and 38 of his 60 receptions came in the first 4 games of the season against Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, and Georgia Southern. It's not
racking them up.
not the highest level of competition there. Mike, nearly a quarter of his seasonal yards came against Georgia Southern when he had 225 yards.
Lit him up.
Ole Miss was running the score up for Georgia Southern, man. Hey, it's impressive. not a lot of guys have 225 yards in any game in their career. So it's impressive that Trey Harris can do that. I'm not trying to take that away from him at all. But I do think it's important to put the context into his production that he did have this season. Now, unfortunately, he also missed some games this season. So, he didn't get to play against some of the tougher competition in the SEC when Ole Miss ended up playing against them. But against South Carolina, LSU, and Florida near the end of the season, he averaged 3.6 receptions per game and 75 yards per game. Much more average numbers than the insane production that he was putting up at the beginning of the year, where he was like 8 yards per route run. It was ridiculous for the first 4 games. So I think contextualizing all of that, looking at his production, realizing that a good majority of it was coming against, inferior competition. And then after those 4 games I mentioned against Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, and Georgia Southern, they played Kentucky. He had a really good game against Kentucky, but Kentucky was not very good this year. So when they did play the South Carolina, the LSU, the Florida, the 3 best teams he played that year, his production dipped a lot. It dipped a lot in comparison to the other teams that they played. So just trying to keep that in mind. I've heard the hype about Trey Harris. At one point, he was being projected like late first. I don't think I've seen that anytime recently. It seems locked into like the second round, according to a lot of mock drafts. Though I think someone recently left him out of their top 2 rounds. So maybe he falls into the 3rd round, which in my opinion is more where I'd put Trey Harris, especially Mike. I've been burned. I've been burned by guys like Treylon Burks and Laviska Shenault and these guys that all are about 6'2", 205 and run a 4.55. All of those guys, in that kind of realm, who don't create a ton of separation, win with their physicality. I'm a little burned, so I'm a little cautious with these guys. I don't know if Trey Harris is really someone that I suspect is going to, number one, hit the ground running at the next level. I think, someone else he also compared to, according to Mock Draftable, was Keon Coleman, someone that we know needs a little bit of development. Had a couple of good games there this year, but, needs a little bit of development. I think Trey Harris is the same. It's going to take a little bit of time to, if he does bloom into, like a top 36 wide receiver, I think it's going to take, 2 or 3 years before we see that. So, for me, I'm looking at Trey Harris. If I'm going to be drafting him, probably the back half of the 2nd round. I don't know if he lasts that long. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at him in the beginning of the 2nd round, but we'll see how the draft lands and where he goes. So people I would rather draft in the 2nd round than Trey Harris: Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, Jack Beck, and if he's still there, of course, Emeka Egbuka, but I think he should be going in your 1st round.
Yeah, Emeka Egbuka, you could probably take him off this list just because I think by the time you get to Trey Harris territory, he'll be long gone, and rightfully so. Yeah. And Trey Harris also a projected 3rd round wide receiver in this next year's draft, which I think is probably pretty good. I think it's like an early 3rd. I forgot to mention before when I was talking about Jalen Milroe, did I give the comps courtesy of Mock Draftable?
I don't think you did.
Would you like to hear some of them?
Let's hear. I love that we're just implementing Mock Draftable now. It's a great website.
Sam Howell, Zach Wilson, and Jimmy Clausen.
Those don't seem.
Those are the guys that are not in this year's draft.
Well, you know what? Jalen Milroe, I don't think he ran, so he probably doesn't have a 40-yard dash on Mock Draftable. So it's just comparing height and weight, probably.
Yeah, I'm just comparing as quarterback here. Let's see, athletic comparisons, guys that aren't in this year's draft. He's compared to Chase Hansen, who's a linebacker, Matt Corral, Devin Leary, Kyle McCord.
Yeah, I think this is just height weight. See, that one thing with Mock Draftable, if they don't run at the combine, it only has a little bit of information to go off of. So it doesn't really give you the athletic comparisons, just the height weight ones, which, Jimmy Clausen was good, but I don't think he was Jalen Milroe kind of athleticism.
No. Let me talk about another underrated player, and that is LSU tight end Mason Taylor. I love me some Mason Taylor. Currently a projected 2nd round draft pick on NFL mockdraftdatabase.com, which I feel is kind of right. They have him going in 1 to the Chargers, which I would love. They have him going 32 to the Eagles, which I would hate. I just don't think that they should spend that pick on a tight end. As much as I love Mason Taylor, I think you could probably sell that pick, move back, and go there. And also the Rams is another one that I saw as a landing spot for Mason Taylor, which would be good. The Rams could use a strapping young tight end. But this is a guy who looks like he's been an NFL tight end for a number of years. This guy is a physical just all around tough, gritty tight end prospect. One of the things that amazes me about Mason Taylor, and okay, just for some reference here, Nate, could you possibly pull up Mason Taylor's height and weight for me? I forgot to pull that up. I apologize.
I sure will.
For his size, he is able to evade defenders after the catch better than I expected. And it's not just with pure physicality. He'll knock guys over. He has no problem doing that. But a number of times, especially in tight end screens, a lot of good tight end screen tight ends in this class for whatever reason. He's able to, athletically and agilely just get over to the side, kind of juke a guy, make a nice cut. And he just, gets out of their way. And he's got pretty decent long speed too for a tight end. Also, solid hands and a good blocker as well. So I know, again, hey, no one cares about blocking. Keeps these guys on the field.
So it does. He is 6'5", 251. Mike, I will give you some comps athletically, measurably. According to Mock Draftable, we got Jeremy Ruckert.
I like Jeremy Ruckert. I wish Jeremy Ruckert would have went to Ohio State. I wish he would have went somewhere that utilized the tight end a little bit more. But I like Jeremy Ruckert.
Got Pat Fryermuth.
That's a good comp. If we get Pat, I like that.
And then throwback.
I know where you're going. I have it pulled up right here.
A player who I have a jersey of, and I'm very happy with, Todd Heap.
Beautiful. So man. I think Mason Taylor's underrated. Nate, you got one more underrated player, then I'm going to close it out on an overrated player. Who do you got for us?
All right. I considered if I wasn't going to put this guy in here, but I need one more opportunity to speak the praise of Devin Neal.
Yes, you do.
Because I can't get enough of Devin Neal, and I'm trying to get other people to spend their second-round picks on him. Maybe I shouldn't be. I should just be keeping it to myself. That way I can just get 100% rostership of Devin Neal. Last year, we expected him to come out, and he did not. I think he, maybe by the time we watched all the film and got into it, maybe he would have been the RB1 in last year's class. It was kind of a tough class to really pick out RB1, with Brooks, of course, coming off the injury.
Yeah.
So he went back, and I think I remember saying, he's not going to be a top 5 running back in this draft class. Man, I eat my own crow plenty. A lot of people don't have him as a top 5 back in this class. So I guess I was right there, but I think I might have him as a top 5 back in this class. We'll find out when we release our top 5 at each position right before the draft. But we're talking 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons, Mike. He's got 4,300 career rushing yards at 5.7 yards per carry. And this is for a Kansas team where he has been the offense for them. They were not very good last year, and he still, had an incredible season where he's had 3 straight seasons with at least 30 runs of 10 yards or more, which is top 26 all years. His sophomore year, he was 26. Otherwise, there was top 20 almost the last 2 years. He's had 32 touchdowns over the past 2 years, which is top 10 in the past 2 years as well. 32, 16, and 16. 85th percentile dominator rating. So as I was saying, he is this offense at Kansas. He dominates the backfield, dominates a lot of their touchdowns and scrimmage yards. 79 career receptions for 723 yards. This guy can do it all. And I know people are worried about his 4.58 yard 40-yard dash. I poo-pooed on Kaleb Johnson and his 40-yard dash. But
you certainly did.
Kaleb Johnson's a lot bigger than Devin Neal, and when you're that big, I think you probably should run a little bit quicker because sprinters are big guys. The small guys are the long distance runners. But I'm not too worried about it because Devin Neal actually had 80th plus percentile vertical jump and broad jump, so he still shows the explosiveness. He just doesn't really have the long speed, which you see that on film. You know that Devin Neal doesn't have the long speed, even though he had plenty of long touchdowns playing for Kansas. So I do believe he can still make it happen. But this is a player, he's got a 53rd percentile speed score, but an 83rd percentile burst score. And I think in the NFL, as a running back, that burst is a lot more important than your overall top speed. We've talked about it before. You only have, maybe a dozen opportunities throughout the year to really show off that long speed when you're 30, 40 yards down the field. So if Devin Neal can't maybe finish off the 80-yard touchdown runs, I'm okay with that because I know that he's going to get me the 5 to 10-yard runs on a very consistent basis. And that's what I'm really excited about Devin Neal, plus the reception ability. He's a great receiver. This is a guy that is one of PFF's top graded running backs this past year. He's actually tied for PFF grade with Omarion Hampton and Quinshon Judkins. And that's where I have him up just about, because I think he is one of the better running backs in this draft class. People need to take note of it. I do think he's a day 2 pick. I will be devastated if he falls into the 4th round. To be quite honest, I think it's a possibility because of the running backs in this draft class, but I personally believe he is way too good to fall into day 3. So I will either be validated or devastated, one of the two, come Friday night. But either way, like even if he's a 4th round pick, even if he's a day 3 running back, I'm going to have a lot of Devin Neal by the end of the summer.
Yep. Yeah. And that's exactly where he's projected. So we'll see how that works out. All right, last one. Let's finish it with an overrated player. And for me, that is Miami, the U, tight end Elijah Arroyo. So I like Elijah Arroyo, but I think you could do better. He's great after the catch, fantastic after the catch, and he has a pretty high catch percentage too. Last year, 74.5% of his passes were caught and that were in his hands. I did see some clunkers off his hands a little bit, just some concentration drops. He has a very, very poor contested catch percentage. Would you like to know what it is for his career, Nate?
22%.
I wish it was that high.
Oh, man.
14.3%. Not good for a tight end. Now, one thing I'll say, Elijah Arroyo is not a traditional inline tight end. This is a guy that you have to move around because he lacks something that the tight end position needs, and that is physicality. I do not think he's the most physical player. I don't want to say he gets taken down easily, but there were times where he definitely could have fought harder. If he can shake a defender, however, he will be, I don't want to say consistently gone. NFL speed will catch up to him, but he puts on a good show of racking up the yards after the catch, which he does, like I said, a great job of it. Nate, you've also discussed in the past, he does have a pretty significant injury history as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's pretty bad. He barely got any snaps in over his first 3 years at Miami.
Yeah, so not good. So that's something to consider as well. And NFL Mock Draft Database has him as a projected 2nd round pick. And a couple ones on here, 32 to Philadelphia. Stop it. They're going to restructure Dallas Goedert from what I've heard, which I will take a restructured Dallas Goedert over a banged up Elijah Arroyo. So, hey, you don't want Elijah Arroyo? Mike, who do I draft instead? How about you head on over to the West Coast and draft Oregon's Terrence Ferguson? He can do everything that Elijah Arroyo can do, but I don't think his breakaway speed is as good as Elijah Arroyo's. He's still plenty fast. I think he's better in the red zone, and he is a much more physical player than Elijah Arroyo is. This is a guy right here who should be moving up draft boards. Let me pull him up right now on NFL mockdraftdatabase.com. It is hard to type and talk at the same time. Let's see where he's projected to go. So he's actually only projected a 4th round draft pick.
Ferguson?
Yeah, Ferguson is.
Oh, he also compares well to guys like Cade Otton.
I love Cade Otton.
Luke Schoonmaker. I think we're going to be talking a little bit about Ferguson a little bit later in the Patreon episode.
We will.
I agree that he is a good undervalued pick maybe. And I also agree that Arroyo is a little overvalued. I've been seeing him also very early in the 2nd round, and between his limited production, his injury history, the fact that, I don't think he has a lot of physicality, and, I don't think he's like a great pure tight end. I think, we're talking about an athlete playing tight end rather than an athletic tight end with Arroyo. So I think there's, for me, a lot of hesitancy with him going nearly that high.
I will take Terrence Ferguson over Arroyo. Check it out. We talked about Arroyo's injury history. Here's the games that Ferguson has played from 2021 to 2024, 14, 13, 14, 12.
I like that.
Yeah. And, his lowest amount of yards in a season was as a freshman with 141. And then it's been 391, 414, and 591. So
it's pretty productive for a college tight end.
Yeah. He's consistently getting better every single year. 16 career touchdowns, 6 in 2023 alone. I like Terrence Ferguson a lot. Let's see, sportsreference.com has him listed as 6'6", 230. So he's going to want to bulk up just a little bit, but still plenty of time to get in an NFL weight room and do all of that. So we thank you very much for tuning in, watching, however you choose to digest it. Again, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Go get a week for free. It's on me Till next time, everybody. For Nate, I'm Mike. Thanks for listening.